Captain Alara Vega's shuttle docked with an almost inaudible hiss against the massive Miriax vessel. Her fingers instinctively brushed against her collar, confirming the neural disruptor was still concealed within the ceremonial uniform Earth Command had insisted she wear for this historic occasion. Historic or suicidal, the jury was still out. Remember, Admiral Trent's voice echoed in her memory, they massacred everyone at the Proxima outpost while claiming to conduct peaceful observation. Trust nothing. The airlock cycled open with a melodic tone that seemed deliberately engineered to be soothing. Alara squared her shoulders and stepped through to meet humanity's former enemies. Captain Vega, your presence honors us. The Miriax waiting in the reception chamber wasn't what she expected. Tall and lithe like all his kind, but lacking the severe formality she'd seen in diplomatic broadcasts. His skin held the characteristic blue-silver sheen, but in the ship's ambient lighting it appeared almost iridescent. Most striking were his eyes, deep violet with unusual copper flecks that seemed to catch the light when he moved. I am Kylan, cultural liaison and your guide through the synchronicity protocol. He performed the Miriax greeting, a graceful motion where his long fingers splayed then pressed against his chest. Alara returned a stiff nod. Let's be clear, I'm here because Earth Command believes this demonstration of trust might prevent further bloodshed, not because I personally believe your procedure is necessary for peace. A slight tilt of his head, she'd learned that indicated curiosity in Miriax's body language. Your skepticism is understandable, Kylan replied, his voice carrying that distinctive resonant quality all Miriax possessed. Your species relies heavily on sensory processing and verbal communication. Ours evolved with empathic connections that transcend such limitations. He gestured toward a corridor lined with what appeared to be living bioluminescent material. The synchronicity chamber is prepared. We can proceed whenever you're ready. Tell me again what exactly I'm agreeing to, Alara said, following at a deliberate distance. A temporary neurological bridge, Kylan explained as they walked. It allows limited sharing of impressions, contextual understanding, emotional responses. Nothing invasive, your private thoughts remain your own. The chamber they entered was unlike anything in human architecture, curved walls that seemed to breathe, surfaces that pulsed with soft light. At the center stood two reclined chairs facing each other, surrounded by delicate crystalline structures. It's quite safe, Captain, Kylan said, noticing her hesitation. We've performed this thousands of times, even with non-Miriax species. Just not with humans, Alara countered, surveying potential escape routes. Something flickered across Kylan's features, too quick to interpret. That is why your participation is significant, the first step toward genuine understanding between our peoples. Alara settled reluctantly into the chair, her fingers clenched around the activation switch for the disruptor. One wrong move from the alien, and she'd trigger a feedback pulse that would incapacitate any Miriax within 20 meters. The process takes approximately 15 of your minutes, Kylan said, taking the seat opposite her. You may experience disorientation initially, but this passes quickly. As crystalline sensors descended around them, Alara met Kylan's unusual eyes with a steely gaze. If this is some elaborate trap. It isn't, Kylan interrupted with unexpected intensity, then more softly, but it's not entirely what you've been told either. Before Alara could respond, a gentle hum filled the chamber, and the world around her began to dissolve into cascading patterns of light and sensation. The sensation wasn't painful, more like plunging into deep water where sound, light, and gravity behaved by different rules. Alara's consciousness expanded outward, encountering an unfamiliar presence that could only be Kylan. Colors and impressions washed over her. A childhood memory, not hers, of standing beneath twin moons, small hands reaching skyward. The scent of a fruit she'd never tasted but somehow recognized as both bitter and sweet. The weight of ceremonial robes during some formal Miriax ritual. Then something darker, flashes of conflict, raised voices in a language she shouldn't understand but somehow did. Kylan standing before a council, his stance defiant as he argued against what? The images became fragmented, deliberately obscured. He's hiding something. Alara's suspicion flared, her hand instinctively reaching for the neural disruptor, though in this mental space the gesture was meaningless. Fear, so much fear in you, Kylan's thoughts brushed against hers. After what your people did to Proxima, damn right. A wave of something unexpected rolled from Kylan's consciousness, shame but also righteous anger. Not my doing, not my choice, look deeper. Despite her resistance, the connection strengthened. She saw Kylan among others of his kind, their faces twisted with disgust as reports from Proxima played across holographic displays. his voice, alone among many, calling it what it was, genocide. You opposed it. Alara's surprise couldn't be hidden in this shared space. Many of us did. The sovereign Concordat claimed it was necessary, that humans represented an existential threat. More fragments emerged. Kylan, standing with others in secret meetings, whispered plans, the formation of what appeared to be a resistance movement within Myriac's society. They told me this procedure was about cultural integration. Alara pushed back against the flow of images, but that's not why you brought me here, is it? The mental space between them shimmered with Kylan's hesitation. No, but I couldn't tell you the truth until we were connected like this. The Concordat monitors everything except this. Here we're briefly beyond their reach. A new cascade of memories, Kylan accessing classified military databases, discovering plans that made his copper-flecked eyes widen with horror, then carefully covering his tracks. Alara saw star charts, deployment schedules, weapon schematics. Her military training recognized a massive offensive operation in planning stages. They never intended to honor the peace treaty. Kylan's thoughts carried bitter resignation. It was only to buy time, position their forces. Why show me this? Alara demanded. Why risk everything? The answer came not in words but in a flood of emotion, the accumulated weight of guilt, hope, and determination. Kylan had watched his civilization's leadership betray everything he believed in, and he could no longer remain silent. As their minds orbited each other in this strange communion, Alara glimpsed something unexpected, how Kylan saw her. The fierce human woman with eyes that held both strength and vulnerability. His admiration for her courage in coming here alone. A subtle warmth that wasn't entirely professional. The realization startled her back to partial awareness of her physical surroundings. The crystalline sensors still hummed around them, but through half-lidded eyes, she could see Kylan watching her with an intensity that mirrored what she'd felt in their shared consciousness. The procedure was reaching its conclusion, the connection between them growing tenuous. Before it dissolved completely, Kylan sent one final, urgent thought. When we return, I must tell you something they cannot hear. Lives depend on it, yours and mine. The mental bridge collapsed, leaving Alara gasping in her chair, her mind reeling with everything she'd witnessed. Across from her, Kylan's expression remained carefully neutral, but his copper-flecked eyes held a silent plea. Whatever game they were now playing, the stakes had just become infinitely higher. The synchronicity protocol was successful, Kylan announced to the Myriac's officials waiting outside the chamber. Captain Vega performed admirably for a first experience. Alara maintained her composure despite the chaos in her mind. The senior Myriac's Minister Jorel, according to her briefing, regarded her with eyes utterly devoid of the warmth she'd glimpsed in Kylan's. Your impressions, Captain. Jorel's voice carried a subtle harmonic that set Alara's teeth on edge. Disorienting, she replied truthfully, but informative. Excellent, we've arranged refreshments while the neural patterns stabilize. Kylan will escort you. Once they were alone in a small observation lounge overlooking the vast nebula surrounding the ship, Alara dropped the diplomatic veneer. You have exactly 1 minute to explain what just happened before I trigger this disruptor and fight my way back to my shuttle. Her fingers hovered near her collar. Kylan glanced at the surveillance devices embedded in the walls, then casually moved to the environment controls, adjusting settings. A subtle harmonic interference filled the room, enough to degrade audio monitoring. What you saw was real, he said quietly. The Concordat is planning an assault on your Arcturus defense grid in 14 days. They've discovered a critical vulnerability in your quantum detection arrays. And I'm supposed to trust the word of a Myriax. Alara kept her voice steady despite her racing pulse. You've been inside my mind, Kylan countered. You know I'm telling the truth. He was right. The connection they'd shared couldn't be falsified. She'd felt his genuine horror at his leader's plans, his determination to prevent another slaughter. Why risk everything to warn us? Your people would execute you for treason. Kylan's gaze dropped. Because I've seen enough death, because what happened at Proxima haunts many of us, because... He hesitated, then met her eyes. Because when I reviewed your military record, studied your speeches advocating for diplomacy even after Proxima, I recognized someone who wants peace as desperately as I do. The intensity of his gaze made something shift in Alara's chest. The connection between them hadn't fully dissolved. She could still sense the edges of his emotions, a lingering effect of the synchronicity. There's more, he continued urgently. I'm not alone. There's a growing faction within Myriac's society opposed to the Concordat's militarism. We need allies, human allies, if we're to prevent this war from consuming both our species. So I'm not just a warning system, I'm a potential diplomatic channel. Yes, Kylan moved closer, lowering his voice further. But the Concordat suspect's descent, that's why we must act quickly. Their proximity awakened echoes of the mental bridge they'd shared, fragments of his consciousness still brushing against hers. Alara felt a dangerous impulse to trust him completely. I'll need proof to convince Earth Command, she said, something tangible. Kylan reached slowly into his ceremonial garment and withdrew a crystalline data node. Everything I've discovered is here, encrypted with a key only I can provide. As she took it, their fingers touched. The contact sent a shock of awareness through her, amplified by the residual connection between them. If I take this, I'm complicit in your treason, Alara whispered. And I in yours, he replied, his copper-flecked eyes holding hers. It seems we now share more than just memories, Captain. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither had anticipated when this mission began. The interference field won't last much longer, Kylan finally said, reluctantly stepping back. We should return before they grow suspicious. Alara nodded, tucking the data node securely into her uniform. Whatever happened next, their fates were now irrevocably linked. Earth's Defense Headquarters, a massive orbital complex above Luna, hummed with activity as Alara laid out everything she'd learned. Admiral Trent and the senior staff listened in stony silence, expressions growing grimmer with each detail. A Myriax defector, Trent finally said, his weathered face unreadable. Convenient timing. I was inside his mind, Admiral, Alara insisted. The synchronicity protocol created a connection that can't be falsified. What I saw was real. General Nakamura, head of intelligence, leaned forward. Even if we believe this Kylan is sincere, he could be being used by the Concordat, feeding you just enough truth to lead us into a trap. Alara had anticipated this reaction. That's why I brought this. She placed Kylan's data node on the conference table. It contains tactical specifications for their planned assault, details only someone with high-level security clearance could access. The verification process took hours. Alara paced her temporary quarters, thoughts repeatedly returning to Kylan, the danger he'd placed himself in, the trust he'd placed in her, the unexpected connection that had formed between them during the synchronicity. Her calm chimed. Admiral Trent's expression was grim on the small display. The data checks out. We've confirmed key elements through our own intelligence channels. The Arcturus grid is indeed vulnerable exactly as he described. Relief washed through her, then you believe him. What I believe is that we have a potential intelligence asset of extraordinary value, Trent replied carefully. One we need to extract immediately. Alara felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Extract. You're being sent back to the Myriax vessel with a diplomatic delegation. Your mission is to secure this defector and any additional intelligence he can provide. Sir, Kylan's not just some asset to be extracted. He's risking everything because he believes in peace between our species. His movement within Myriax society could be the key to genuine coexistence. Trent's expression hardened. Your personal feelings are clouding your judgment, Captain. Was he right? The lingering effects of the synchronicity had created something between her and Kylan that defied easy categorization. Not quite attraction, not quite friendship, but a profound understanding that transcended normal boundaries. We depart in 6 hours, Trent continued. I suggest you prepare yourself for what may be necessary. After he disconnected, Alara stood at her viewport, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The mission parameters were clear: protect humanity's interests first. Everything else, including Kylan's safety and the fragile peace movement he represented, was secondary. But the memories they'd shared told a different story. If Earth Command treated this as purely a military opportunity rather than a diplomatic one, they'd be repeating the same mistakes that had led to war in the first place. Her decision crystallized. She would return to the Myriax vessel, but not just as Earth's representative. She would be the bridge between Kylan's resistance and humanity, even if it meant defying direct orders. Meanwhile, aboard the Myriax vessel, Kylan faced his own interrogation. The human's neural patterns showed irregularities during the synchronicity, Minister Jorel said, circling him like a predator. Explain. First-time participants often experience destabilization, Kylan replied, maintaining a calm he didn't feel. Her mind was attempting to process an unfamiliar form of connection. And yet our monitoring systems detected unauthorized access to classified databases shortly before her arrival. Kylan's expression remained neutral despite the fear coursing through him. Perhaps security should investigate all personnel with access privileges. Joral's eyes narrowed. You've always been sympathetic to humans, Kylan. Your arguments against the Proxima operation are well documented. I follow the Concordat's directives, he responded carefully, as we all must. The lie tasted bitter. Soon, Alara would return with the delegation, and when she did, everything would change, for both their species. The diplomatic shuttle docked with the Myriax vessel exactly as scheduled. Alara stepped out first, leading Earth's delegation with practiced formality. Behind her calm exterior, anxiety churned. She hadn't been able to warn Kylan about Trent's extraction plan. Minister Joral greeted them with the traditional Myriax ceremony, but Alara immediately sensed something was wrong. Kylan wasn't present among the cultural liaisons. We're honored by your return, Captain Vega, Joral said. The Concordat is pleased that our synchronicity protocol has fostered such enthusiastic diplomatic exchange. Something in his tone sent warning signals coursing through her. He knew, or at least suspected. Where is Liaison Kylan? She asked, maintaining her composure. I'd hoped to continue our cultural discussions. Regrettably, he has been reassigned to duties more suited to his capabilities. Joral's copperless eyes revealed nothing. Another liaison will assist you. Earth's delegation was escorted to luxurious quarters, ostensibly to rest before formal negotiations began. Once alone, Alara activated the scanner disguised as a ceremonial pin, searching for surveillance devices. Finding 3, she left them intact but positioned herself in their blind spot. The residual synchronicity connection between her and Kylan had faded to almost nothing, but she concentrated, reaching out with her mind as he had taught her during their brief mental communion. Where are you? Nothing. Then, just as she was about to give up, a whisper of sensation, fear, determination, and coordinates. Not words, but impressions only she would understand. Beneath the main vessel, detention level. Alara made her decision. Slipping a compact phase disruptor from her hidden equipment cache, she sent a coded message to Commander Reeves, the one member of Earth's delegation she fully trusted. Implementing Protocol Omega, delay negotiations by any means necessary. The Myriax ship's architecture was largely biological, living systems that responded to genetic markers. Using techniques gleaned from Kylan's memories, she bypassed 3 security checkpoints before reaching the detention level. 2 guards outside a sealed chamber never saw her coming. The phase disruptor left them unconscious but unharmed, a distinction she knew Kylan would appreciate. Inside the chamber, she found him suspended in a containment field, his silver-blue skin dulled with pain. His eyes, those striking copper-flecked violet eyes, widened at the sight of her. You came back, he whispered as she deactivated the field, even knowing it was a trap. Of course I did, Alara supported his weakened form. Your intelligence checks out. Earth is reinforcing the Arcturus grid now. Relief washed over his features, then it wasn't for nothing. This is just the beginning, she said, helping him toward the exit. Your resistance movement, the Peace Faction, Earth Command has agreed to open dialogue with them directly. Joral knows, Kylan warned, the Concordat will never allow. They won't have a choice, Alara met his gaze steadily, not with what we're about to do. As they moved through the corridor, Kylan's hand found hers. The touch sparked that now-familiar resonance between them. The synchronicity had created something permanent, a bond neither of their species had anticipated. There will be consequences, he murmured, for both of us. I'm counting on it. Alara's lips curved into a determined smile. Profound change never comes without risk. Alarms began blaring throughout the vessel. Their time had run out. Ready? She asked, drawing her weapon. Kylan straightened, his expression resolute as he activated a concealed communicator, signaling his fellow resistance members throughout the ship. Together, he said, the single word carrying the weight of everything they'd shared. As chaos erupted around them, Alara felt not fear but certainty. Whatever came next, whether diplomatic revolution or renewed conflict, they had created something unprecedented. A true bridge between their species forged in shared consciousness and mutual trust. And perhaps something more, a connection that transcended the boundaries of their different biologies, histories, and worlds. Something neither had been looking for but both now recognized as precious. The future of 2 civilizations hung in the balance. But in this moment, as Alara and Kylan moved as one through the corridors, their synchronized movements a physical echo of their mental bond, they embodied the only real hope for lasting peace. Understanding that began with 2 individuals brave enough to see beyond the limitations of their separate worlds. Retry Claude can make mistakes.